Why is it that some people walk into a room and instantly command respect, while others spend years trying to prove themselves and still feel invisible? It's not about status, it's not about money, and it's definitely not about how loud you speak. Respect doesn't start with others. It starts with something far deeper, something most people completely ignore. We live in a world where everyone is trying to be liked, but very few people understand how to be valued. And that's the difference. So the real question isn't, why does no one respect you? The real question is, what are you doing that teaches people not to? You teach people how to treat you, not through what you say, but through what you consistently allow. Most people think respect is something you earn by proving your worth, by explaining yourself better, by being more available, more agreeable, more accommodating. But what actually happens is much simpler and far more uncomfortable. People watch your behavior, not your intentions. They notice what you tolerate. They observe what you ignore. And from that, they quietly decide how far they can go with you. If you constantly say yes when you want to say no, you're not being kind, you're setting a standard. If you laugh off disrespect to avoid conflict, you're not keeping peace. You're giving permission. If you over-explain your decisions, hoping people will understand you better, you're not building clarity. You're signaling uncertainty. And uncertainty invites people to test limits. Respect is not built in big moments. It's built in small, repeated signals. The way you respond when someone interrupts you. The way you react when your time is wasted. The way you handle being overlooked. Each moment may seem insignificant, but together they form a pattern. And that pattern becomes your identity in the eyes of others. The challenge is, many people are not even aware of the signals they're sending. They believe they are being patient, humble, easygoing. But what others experience is someone who doesn't protect their own value. And when you don't protect your value, people rarely do it for you. There's a quiet rule at play. People don't rise to your expectations, they fall to your standards. Not the standards you talk about, but the standards you enforce through action. If your actions say, this is okay, even when it isn't, people will believe you. Not because they're bad, but because humans naturally adjust to the environment they're given. Changing this doesn't require aggression or dominance. It requires awareness and consistency. It means noticing the moments where you compromise yourself just to keep others comfortable. It means choosing discomfort in the short term so that you don't create long-term patterns of being overlooked. It means understanding that every small decision is a message. When you begin to shift your behavior, people notice. Not because you announced a change, but because the pattern is different. The person who used to always agree now pauses. The person who used to tolerate now addresses things calmly. The person who used to overgive now becomes selective. And in that shift, something else happens. People start adjusting. Because the truth is, most people are not deliberately trying to disrespect you. They are simply responding to the version of you that you've consistently shown them. Respect starts with self-respect, and most people misunderstand what that actually means. They think self-respect is confidence on the outside, how you speak, how you dress, how boldly you present yourself. But real self-respect is much quieter than that. It's not what you show the world, it's what you accept from it. It's the standard you hold when no one is watching, and the boundaries you keep even when it's uncomfortable. You can't expect others to value you if deep down you don't value yourself. And that lack of value doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it shows up as over-explaining your choices, as if you need permission to live your own life. Sometimes it looks like constantly proving your worth, hoping that if you just do enough, give enough, be enough, people will finally see you differently. But what they actually see is someone who is unsure of their own importance. Self-respect is not about being perfect. It's about being honest with yourself. It's recognizing when something feels wrong and choosing not to ignore it. It's acknowledging when someone crosses a line and deciding that your comfort matters just as much as theirs. It's understanding that your time, your energy, and your attention are limited, and not everyone is entitled to them. The problem is, many people are taught to prioritize being liked over being respected. They're taught to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace at any cost. And while that may create temporary harmony, it slowly erodes something deeper. Because every time you silence yourself to make someone else comfortable, you send a message to them and to yourself that your voice doesn't matter as much. And over time, you start believing that message. Self-respect is built in those small, quiet decisions. The moment you say no without guilt, the moment you stop chasing someone who is indifferent, the moment you choose not to engage in something that drains you, even if it disappoints others, these decisions don't always feel powerful in the moment. In fact, they often feel uncomfortable, but they redefine how you see yourself, and that shift changes everything. Because when you respect yourself, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop trying to convince people to treat you better, and instead, you naturally expect it. Your energy changes. Your presence becomes more grounded, more certain. And people respond to that, not because you demanded respect, but because you embody it. It's not about controlling how others behave. It's about controlling what you allow. And when your standards become clear, not through words, but through actions, people begin to understand where you stand. Self-respect doesn't make you distant. It makes you clear. Stop seeking approval, because the moment you start depending on it, you lose control over how you see yourself. Most people don't even realize how often they look for validation. It's subtle. It's in the way you check someone's reaction after you speak. It's in the hesitation before you make a decision, wondering what others will think. It's in the need to be liked, accepted, included. And while that may feel natural, it slowly creates a dangerous pattern. You begin to measure your worth through other people's opinions. The problem is, approval is inconsistent. It changes depending on who you're around, what mood they're in, what they believe, what they expect. One person might admire you for something, while another criticizes you for the exact same thing. If you build your identity around approval, you end up constantly adjusting yourself, trying to fit into shifting expectations that were never yours to begin with. And over time, you lose clarity. You stop asking, what do I actually want? And start asking, what will make them accept me? You filter your words, soften your opinions, hold back your true thoughts. Not because they're wrong, but because you're afraid they won't be received well. You begin to perform instead of express. And the more you perform, the more disconnected you feel from who you really are. What's interesting is, the more you chase approval, the less respect you tend to receive. Not because people are intentionally dismissing you, but because they can sense the uncertainty. When someone constantly looks for reassurance, it signals that they don't fully trust their own judgment. And when you don't trust yourself, it becomes difficult for others to fully trust you too. Approval is not the same as respect. Approval is often temporary. It comes and goes depending on how well you meet someone's expectations. Respect, on the other hand, is built on consistency and self-assurance. It grows when people see that you stand by your values, even when it's inconvenient. It develops when your actions align with what you believe, not with what gets the most applause. Letting go of approval doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop needing their agreement to feel secure in your choices. It means you can listen to feedback without being defined by it. It means you can disagree without feeling guilty. It means you can make decisions based on your own standards, even if not everyone understands them. There's a quiet strength in that kind of independence. You become less reactive, less influenced by every opinion that comes your way. You start to move with intention instead of pressure. And in that shift, something changes. Your presence becomes more stable, more certain, more grounded. Because when you're no longer trying to be approved by everyone, you finally have the space to become someone worth respecting. Set clear boundaries, because without them, people don't know where you end and they begin. Most people struggle with boundaries not because they don't understand them, but because they're afraid of the reaction that comes with setting them. They worry about being seen as rude, difficult, or selfish. So instead of being clear, they stay flexible. They say yes when they mean no. They allow things that don't sit right with them. And over time, that flexibility turns into silent frustration. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about defining what is acceptable for you. They are a reflection of your values, your priorities, and your self-respect. Without them, everything becomes negotiable: your time, your energy, your attention. And when everything is negotiable, people will naturally take more than you intended to give. What makes boundaries difficult is that they often create discomfort in the moment. When you say no to something you used to say yes to, it can surprise people. When you stop being available in the way you once were, it can confuse them. And sometimes it can even disappoint them. But that reaction is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that the pattern is changing. Many people confuse boundaries with distance. They think that setting limits will push others away or damage relationships. But the opposite is often true. Clear boundaries create clarity. They remove assumptions. They allow people to understand how to engage with you in a way that is healthy and respectful. Without boundaries, relationships can become unbalanced, where one person gives more and the other takes more, often without even realizing it. There's also a difference between saying something once and actually enforcing it. Anyone can express a boundary, but consistency is what gives it meaning. If you say your time is important, but continue to tolerate interruptions, the message becomes unclear. If you say you don't accept certain behavior, but never address it when it happens, the boundary disappears. People don't follow what you say, they follow what you consistently uphold. Boundaries don't have to be loud or aggressive. In fact, the most effective ones are often calm and simple. A direct response, a clear decision, no long explanations, no over-justifying, just clarity. And that clarity removes confusion, both for you and for others. As you begin to set and maintain boundaries, something shifts internally. You start to feel more in control of your own life. You become more intentional with your time and energy. You stop overextending yourself just to meet expectations that were never clearly defined. And externally, people begin to adjust. Not always immediately, and not always comfortably, but gradually. Because when your actions consistently communicate what is and isn't acceptable, people learn where the line is. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility is what turns words into something people actually believe. A lot of people focus on what to say it, how to sound confident, how to appear strong. But none of that holds weight if your actions don't align over time. Because people are not convinced by isolated moments. They're convinced by patterns. And patterns are created through consistency. You can say you value your time, but if you're always late or always available at any moment, that message disappears. You can say you don't tolerate disrespect, but if you ignore it when it happens, people don't take your words seriously. It's not that they don't hear you. It's that your actions are telling them something different. Credibility is built when there's alignment between what you say and what you do. When your behavior matches your standards repeatedly, not occasionally, anyone can show up strong for a day, for a week, even for a month. But what people trust is what you do when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when there's no immediate reward. Inconsistency creates confusion. One day you're firm, the next day you're flexible. One moment you set a limit, the next moment you ignore it. People don't know which version of you they're dealing with. And when there's uncertainty, they start testing boundaries, not necessarily out of disrespect, but out of curiosity. They're trying to figure out where things actually stand. Consistency removes that confusion. It creates clarity. When your responses are stable, your behavior predictable in the right way, people understand what to expect from you. And that understanding builds trust. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it. There's also a deeper layer to this. Consistency is not just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you reinforce your own sense of reliability. You start trusting your own decisions more. You stop second guessing yourself as much. And that internal trust becomes visible externally. The challenge is that consistency requires discipline. It requires you to show up the same way, even when you don't feel like it. It requires you to hold your standards, even when it would be easier to let them slide. It requires patience because credibility is not built overnight. It's built slowly, through repetition. And people notice that repetition. They may not comment on it directly, but they observe it. They see that you don't change depending on the situation or the person. They see that your values are not flexible based on convenience. And over time, that creates a sense of reliability that words alone can never achieve. Because at the end of the day, respect is not given to what you promise. It's given to what you consistently prove. Silence is power, but not the kind most people think. When people hear silence, they often associate it with weakness, hesitation, or lack of confidence. They believe that to be respected, they need to speak more, explain more, defend more. They feel the urge to fill every gap in a conversation, to justify every decision, to respond to every comment. But what they don't realize is that constant talking can actually reduce the weight of their presence. Silence, when used intentionally, creates space. And in that space, people pay attention. Not every situation requires a reaction. Not every opinion deserves a response. When you respond to everything, you train people to expect it. You show them that your attention is always available, that your energy can be easily accessed. But when you become selective with your words, something shifts. Your voice carries more value because it's not given out freely. There's also a difference between silence and avoidance. Silence is not about suppressing yourself or ignoring important issues. It's about choosing when to engage and when to step back. It's about understanding that reacting immediately is not always the strongest move. Sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. When someone challenges you, disrespects you, or tries to provoke a reaction, your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to explain your side. But in many cases, that reaction gives the situation more energy than it deserves. It turns a moment into a conflict. And often, it places you in a position where you're trying to win approval instead of maintaining control. Silence breaks that pattern. It removes the immediate reaction. It gives you time to observe, to think, to decide how you actually want to respond, if you even need to respond at all. And that pause creates a sense of control that is difficult to ignore. People also reveal a lot in silence. When you're not rushing to fill the space, others tend to speak more. They explain themselves, they show their intentions, they expose their thinking, and in that process, you gain clarity. You understand the situation better without having to push for answers. There's a calm confidence in someone who doesn't feel the need to prove themselves in every moment. Someone who can sit in silence without discomfort. Someone who doesn't rush to defend their position because they're secure in it. That kind of presence stands out because it's rare. Silence also protects your energy. Not every conversation deserves your full attention. Not every disagreement needs to be resolved. By choosing where to invest your words, you avoid unnecessary conflict and focus on what actually matters. And over time, people begin to notice that you don't react impulsively, that you don't get pulled into every situation, that when you do speak, there's intention behind it. Walk away from disrespect because staying in it quietly teaches people that it's acceptable. A lot of people think strength means staying patient, enduring behavior that doesn't feel right just to keep things stable. They convince themselves that ignoring disrespect makes them mature, that tolerating it shows emotional control. But over time, that tolerance becomes a pattern, and that pattern slowly lowers the standard of how they are treated. Disrespect rarely starts in big, obvious ways. It shows up in small moments, being talked over, being dismissed, being taken for granted, having your time ignored. Each moment on its own may seem minor, easy to overlook, easy to justify. But when those moments repeat, they stop being small, they become a signal. And the real issue is not just what others are doing, it's what you continue to accept. When you stay in situations where you're not valued, you send a message without saying a word. You tell people that your presence is guaranteed, no matter how they behave. You tell them that your standards are flexible, that your boundaries can be tested without consequence. And most of the time, people don't consciously decide to disrespect you. They simply adjust to what is allowed. Walking away is not about ego. It's about clarity. It's recognizing that your time and energy have value, and not every environment deserves access to them. It's understanding that respect is not something you beg for or argue into existence. It's something that either exists in the interaction or it doesn't. What makes walking away difficult is the emotional attachment. The history, the connection, the investment you've already made. You start thinking about the effort, the memories, the possibility that things might change. And because of that, you stay longer than you should, hoping that if you just explain better, give more, or wait a little longer, the situation will improve. But respect is not built on hope. It's built on behavior. And when behavior doesn't change, staying only reinforces the pattern. Walking away doesn't always mean leaving dramatically or cutting people off completely. Sometimes it's quieter than that. It's creating distance. It's reducing access. It's no longer engaging in the same way. It's choosing not to invest where there is no return of respect. That decision often feels uncomfortable at first. There can be doubt, second-guessing, even guilt. But that discomfort is temporary. What's more damaging is the long-term effect of staying in environments where your value is not recognized. When you begin to walk away from disrespect, something shifts internally. You stop waiting for others to change, and you start making decisions based on your own standards. You regain a sense of control over your environment, and externally, people notice the difference, not always immediately and not always positively at first. Some may question it, some may resist it, but over time, your actions make it clear that access to you is not automatic, it's conditional on mutual respect.